when I'm in classroom and I start speaking, what are they supposed to do? They get quiet. I got some students here, thank God. I think I promised most of you a short evening, and some of you may know I said 30 minutes. To be really sure, I timed it, and it's 29 minutes and 5 seconds the last time I checked. So, but we're going to begin the evening with the invocation. We're blessed to have Reverend Dr. Lee. He's going to do that for us. Come on up.
Good afternoon and good evening-ish, everybody. Welcome to Shrine University. My name is Reverend Dr. Dongwoo Lee. I'm a university minister here and also a faculty member. I'm so honored to give you an invocation today. So would you please join me in prayer? Gracious God, source of all life and wisdom, we gather this evening in gratitude for a life of faithful service and steady dedication. We give thanks for the Professor Kluting, whose long work among us has been a gift to this university and to the wider community. We give thanks for his years in the United States Air Force, where responsibility and discipline shaped his service to others. We give thanks for his leadership across the Hill Country, where he has served civic organizations and contributed to the life of his region. And we give thanks for his 14 years of teaching in this institution, where he has guided students in business, management, and leadership with care and attention. In each of these places, his life has been marked by commitment to others and by faithfulness in the work entrusted to him. As Professor Kluting offers his final lecture today, grant us attentive hearts. Help us to receive not only his words, but also the witness of life lived among students, colleagues, and the community over many years. What has been given through his teaching and service does not end here. It continues in the lives of students, in their work and decisions, and in the ways they carry forward what they have received into the communities they will serve. In your providence, nothing given in faithfulness is lost. Time is held within relationships, and what is shared in trust and care continues to take a new shape in ways we do not fully see. As Professor Kluting enters this new season of life, be present with him, grant him rest from his work, strength for the days ahead, and peace in what lies before him. We also give thanks for his wife Marty and for his family, and for the long years of companionship, love, and support through which his life has been sustained. In your continued care, surround them with your blessing and presence. We ask this through the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
All right, real quick, I would like to introduce a colleague and good friend, Dr. Bill Pugh, whose idea this was to do this thing called Last Lecture. And he wanted me to be the first speaker to do it. And first I said no, and then I found out what it was going to be about, how it should be, and I said yes. So, Dr. Pugh.
Thank you. I believe everybody can hear us pretty well. I don't think I need to use the microphone, so it's so great to see all the folks here, the family, friends, colleagues, and even students. I may have heard a few complaints about you in the last year, but your students are here. Anyway, welcome everybody to the last lecture speaker series hosted by the Department of Business here at Shrine University. Pleased to present Professor Robert Kluting, Assistant Professor of Business and Management Department Chair, for his last lecture presentation titled the career you build, and the life you keep. Drawing from his diverse experience as an Air Force Missile Combat Group Commander, obtained his Master's in Business Administration from the University of South Dakota, has been a dedicated leader here in the Hill Country for many organizations and businesses. Professor Kluting will reflect on his experiences, relationships, and life lessons from over a decade in academic service and a lifetime of professional service as well. Inspired by the legacy of Professor Randy Pausch of Carnegie Mellon University, this series invites us to reflect on the intersection of work, purpose, and personal fulfillment. Ladies and gentlemen, I now would like to introduce Professor Robert Kluting and his last lecture.
Well, I've got a good friend here too that we're kind of both known to be guys that can get a little bit verbose. And people kind of say, I don't know if it's going to be Dr. Woodhull or Professor Kluting who's going to talk the most. So he's pointing at me this time. Okay. Anyways, I do have my talk written. I didn't want to get off track and get off on rabbit trails. I'm always trying to teach my students, and there's a handful of them in here, when you do a talk, make sure you know who your audience is, but also make it to the point. It needs to be as brief as it can be and cover the subject and get to the point. So my point is going to be very simple, and I hope there's takeaways for any of you here, all of you here. Doesn't matter if you're a student, middle-aged, or in my age group. That's why it's called The Career You Build Today and the Life You Keep. I'm going to give you the quick topics, and then I'll go. The myth of arrival. Careers are built twice. The subtle drift. What you keep, very important. Redefining success. Seasons, not balance. Relationships, the long game. The courage to adjust. Attention is your life. A simple framework. And then this thing that you're going to like the best called the closing. It's only 15 pages of notes. Just bear with me. Thank all of you again for taking the time to be here this evening. It's a very busy time for everyone. And I've got a handful of students here that may still have a final exam tomorrow. They're going to be waiting to see their final grades the next day or two. Some of them are headed home, maybe even this evening, but for them, I really thank you. This talk has a lot to do with students, of course. No surprise. If this was truly a last lecture, I think I would want to speak about something that outlasts resumes, job titles, promotions, and even your most ambitious plans. Not because those things are meaningless. They matter a lot. Work matters. Achievement matters. Ambition matters. But they don't last in the way we imagine they will. So tonight I want to talk about the career you build today and the life you keep while you're building it. Because most of us are taught how to build a career, but not taught how to keep a life, how to alongside it. If we're not careful, we can become incredibly successful at constructing something impressive externally while slowly neglecting the very things that make success feel worthwhile internally. And if we're not careful, we can become incredibly, let's see, I got that. Yeah, successful. We're constructing that. I don't think that happens though dramatically. It happens actually quietly. One late night at a time. One postponed conversation at a time. One, I'll deal with that later at a time. Until one day we look up and realize we built a life optimized for achievement, but not necessarily for meaning. So tonight, I want to explore a simple idea. The career you build is important, but the person you become while building it is more important. And the life you keep along the way may matter most of all, and I hope it does. The myth of arrival. Many of us live with a quiet assumption that life will begin once we arrive somewhere. Where are those somewheres? Once I get the degree, my students. Once I had the job, land the job, students. Once I get promoted. Once I make partner. Once I launch a company. Once I finally feel secure. We treat life like a waiting room and a career like the door that finally lets us in. And from the outside, this mindset can look incredibly productive. It can motivate us to work hard, sacrifice, and to push ourselves. But there's a hidden danger in constantly living for the next milestone, because there's no magical arrival point where life suddenly becomes meaningful. There's no moment where everything permanently settles into clarity, confidence, and fulfillment. Instead, there are seasons, trade-offs, responsibilities, unexpected setbacks, moments of joy mixed with moments of uncertainty. And all of those things together become our lives. That means something important. If you sacrifice your health, your relationships, your curiosity, your integrity, or your peace of mind now for some imagined future version of life, you are not postponing life, you're shaping it. The habits you practice today become your future. The priorities you repeat become your identity. The way you spend ordinary days becomes the way you spend your life. And that realization can be uncomfortable, because it means we can't entirely separate career from life. The career you build today is your life, happening in daily installments, not someday, now. Careers are built twice. I've come to believe that every career is built twice. The first time is external. That's the visible version. You get degrees, promotions, awards, titles, accomplishments, recognition. It's the version people can summarize quickly in a biography or a LinkedIn profile. But the second career is internal. That one is built through habits, values, relationships, emotional patterns, and the kind of person you become while pursuing success. The external career is public. The internal career is private. The external career asks, what have you achieved? The internal career asks, what has achieving done to you? And that second question matters more than many people realize, because the internal career is harder to revise. You can pivot industries, switch jobs, move to different cities, go back to school. You can reinvent your resume. But if you spent 10 years training yourself to ignore exhaustion, avoid vulnerability, seek constant validation, neglect relationships, or tie your self-worth entirely to achievement, that becomes your operating system. Operating systems are difficult to rewrite. That's why ambition alone is not enough. You need awareness. While you're building a career for yourself, ask these questions. What habits am I reinforcing? What am I teaching myself to value? Who am I becoming under pressure? Because eventually your achievements stop feeling separate from your character. They become connected. And long after the title changes, the version of you created during those years remains. The subtle drift. One of the most important lessons I've learned is this. Very few people consciously choose a life they later regret. Instead, they drift into one. Drift rarely feels dramatic. It feels practical. It sounds like this is temporary. I just need to push through this season. I'll slow down later. This is what success requires. And to be fair, sometimes intense seasons are necessary. Building meaningful work often does require sacrifice. Growth requires effort. Responsibility requires discipline. But the danger is that temporary choices have a way of becoming permanent patterns. A late night becomes a lifestyle. Constant stress becomes normal. Absence becomes routine. Disconnection becomes familiar. And because things happen gradually, we don't often notice them until much later. I think many people assume life changes through major decisions we make. But more often, life changes through repeated small decisions we stop questioning. That's why self-awareness matters so much. The question is not whether you will make sacrifices, because you will. The question is whether those sacrifices are connected to something you consciously chose or something you slowly slid into without noticing. Because drift is powerful. The question is whether those, and if you don't define success intentionally, the world will define it for you. Usually in terms of productivity, visibility, income, and comparison. But a life built entirely on external comparison becomes very exhausting. There will always be someone ahead of you, always someone earning more, someone more accomplished, someone more recognized. If comparison becomes your compass, satisfaction stays permanently out of reach. What you keep. When people reflect on their lives, not only at the end, but at turning points, they rarely define meaning by titles alone. They define it by what they kept, the relationships they maintained, the integrity they protected, the curiosity they didn't lose, the memories that were present enough to experience, the people who still know who they are beneath the work. Because careers are dynamic, industries change, technology changes, skills evolve, roles disappear. What feels permanent professionally can become temporary surprisingly fast. But the life you keep, that's different. Your character matters, your relationships matter, your ability to experience joy matters, your capacity for presence matters. If everything about my career changed tomorrow, what would still be intact? Would you still have close relationships? Would you still have your health? Would you still know who you are apart from your work? Would your life still feel meaningful? These are difficult questions, but they're important ones. Because a career can enhance your life without becoming your entire identity. And if your entire sense of self depends on your professional success, even small setbacks can begin to feel existential. That's too much pressure for any job to carry. No title can fully sustain a human being emotionally. No promotion permanently resolves insecurity. No achievement eliminates the need for connection, meaning, and belonging. Those needs remain. no matter how accomplished you become. Redefining success. Many of us inherit our definition of success without ever examining it. We absorb it from culture, from social media, from family expectations, from professional environments, from comparison. And eventually success becomes a narrow scoreboard. Highest salary, most prestigious title, fastest growth, most visible accomplishments. The problem is these things are not bad. The problem is they're incomplete. External achievement is measurable, easy to compare, easy to display, easy to reward. But what's measurable is not always what's meaningful. A person can be highly accomplished and yet deeply unhappy, highly respected and profoundly lonely, financially successful and emotionally exhausted. So maybe success deserves a broader definition. What if success also meant having relationships that outlast your career? Doing work aligned, at least partially, with your values. Maintaining physical and mental health. Having enough, not necessarily more than everyone else. Being able to rest without guilt. Being present for the people you love. Being proud not only of what you achieved, but how you achieved it. That is not smaller ambition. That's a fuller one. A narrow definition of success can produce a very impressive life externally and a very empty one internally. Many people don't realize that until they've spent years chasing goals that are no longer satisfying them once they finally arrive. Seasons, not balance. People often talk about work-life balance as though life should just stay perfectly symmetrical at all times. For most people, that's unrealistic. Life moves in seasons. There will be seasons when your career requires extraordinary focus. Launching something, finish your degree, leading to a crisis, starting over, taking a risk. Then there will be seasons where life outside work rightfully takes priority. Family, health, loss, reflection, recovery. The goal is not perfect balance every day. The goal is awareness over time. Are you consciously entering an intense season, or have you been trapped in one? Do you know what you're prioritizing temporarily? And just as importantly, do you know when it's time to shift? Because many people know how to accelerate, but fewer know how to slow down. Slowing down is not laziness. Sometimes it's wisdom. Rest is not always the opposite of ambition. Sometimes it is what allows ambition to remain sustainable. A fulfilling life is rarely balanced moment to moment, but it can become balanced across seasons if we remain aware enough to adjust. Relationships, the long game. Across decades of psychological and sociological research, one finding appears again and again. Strong relationships are among the strongest predictors of long-term well-being. Not status, not income alone, not prestige. Relationships. And yet relationships are often treated as flexible, as though they can simply wait until our schedule becomes easier. Relationships do not survive on intentions alone. They're built through small, repeated acts of attention, like returning a phone call, remembering details, showing up when it's inconvenient, listening when you're tired, being present instead of distracted. Your career may reward intensity. Relationships require consistency. And consistency is harder because it's quieter. There's often no applause for it, no promotion attached to it, no public recognition. But over years it becomes one of the most meaningful investments a person can make, because eventually achievements become memories, but people remain. The people who supported you during difficult seasons, the people who knew you before your resume did, the people who stayed when success was uncertain. As you build yourself, ask yourself, build your career, who am I building my life with? Not just my resume for. Because in the long run, those relationships will likely matter more than almost any professional milestone you achieve. The courage to adjust. At some point, many people realize that they're on a path that no longer fits. Maybe the work changed. Maybe they've changed. Maybe the cost became too high. Maybe success turned out to feel different than expected. Recognizing that truth is difficult. Acting on it, even harder. Because changing direction can feel like failure, wasted time, lost momentum, I'm falling behind. But staying on a path that no longer aligns with who you are, that carries a cost as well. And often a much greater one. Careers today are rarely linear. People reinvent themselves constantly. Industries evolve. Priorities change. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. So give yourself permission to adjust, to redefine success, to let go of outdated goals, to admit when something no longer fits, to choose meaning over image. That isn't a weakness, that is maturity. The earlier you adjust, the more of your life you keep aligned. And alignment matters, because achievement without alignment eventually becomes exhausting. Attention to your life. There's one resource even more limited than time: attention. Where you place your attention day after day becomes your life. Not your intentions, not your aspirations, not your someday plans, your attention. If your attention is constantly fragmented, reactive, rushed, and externally controlled, your life will feel fragmented, reactive, rushed, and externally controlled. If your attention regularly includes reflection, focus, connection, and presence, your life begins to reflect those qualities too. Modern careers compete aggressively for attention. Notifications, emails, metrics, deadlines, algorithms, urgency. There will always be something asking more of you, which means partaking attention has to become an act of intention. That doesn't require abandoning ambition or disconnecting from the world completely. It means simply asking, what deserves sustained attention from me? What is shaping my mind every day? What kind of life are my habits creating? Because ultimately, your life is not merely what you hope to do, it's what you repeatedly paid attention to. Skills, reputation, security, opportunities, expertise. Second question, what am I becoming? What habits are forming? What mindset is developing? How do I respond under pressure? Who am I when nobody's watching? Third, what am I keeping? Am I keeping meaningful relationships? My health, my integrity, my curiosity, my ability to be present, my sense of meaning. Because if any one of those dimensions is constantly neglected, and eventually the entire structure becomes unstable. A strong career with a neglected life is very fragile. A meaningful life without any direction can feel untethered. The goal is not perfection. The goal is alignment. Closing. So if this were truly my last lecture, I would not simply tell you, and this is particular for students and younger people, but hopefully take away for all of us. I wouldn't simply tell you to dream bigger. You already know how to pursue achievement. Instead, I would encourage you to pay closer attention to the life you are already living while you pursue those dreams. Because one day, you will not evaluate your life based on your best intentions. You will evaluate it based on what you actually built and what you managed to keep. So build boldly, work hard, take risks, pursue excellence, but do not postpone living until some imagined future version of success finally arrives. Call the people you love. Protect your health. Pay attention to your days. Allow yourselves to change. Protect your integrity. Remain curious. Be present for your own life while it's happening. And lastly, and most importantly, continue your choice of a faith journey throughout your life. Because the career you build today is not separate from your life. It is your life, happening quietly, steadily, one decision at a time. As I mentioned, I tried to design this last lecture talk to have takeaways for everyone here. But that's your decision if it works for you. I think some of them will work good for grandparents, for parents, and again, particularly for students, but even some people mid-career. Maybe that career is not as fulfilling as you thought it would be. Maybe it's time to readjust. Gives you something to think about. As I wrap up this last lecture, I want to thank Dr. Bill Pugh, my colleague in the management department here at Schreiner, for coming up with this idea of starting a last lecture series for our school, and for choosing me to be the first one to do the talk. I did tell you I wasn't crazy about it at first. I didn't know what it was about. I thought I was going to get up here and just talk about my achievements. I said, don't want to do that, Professor Bill. He said, no, go watch this YouTube on the guy that started this, who was terminally ill 20 years ago, and come back and talk to me. I did. What did I tell you? I said I would do it. So I do have a quick story, a funny one, I think, by the way. Someone in here is going to agree with me, at least one. November of 2016, a very good friend and colleague of mine, none other than Eldon Sheffer, went to then Provost Dr. Charlie McCormick and told him that he had chosen to retire in December. He said that he would like Robert Kluting to take his full-time position starting in January. Dr. McCormick told Ellen he could decide when to retire, but I will decide who to hire. I got lucky. When I interviewed for the job with Dr. McCormick, he ended our visit with the comment, "This is not a job to get rich." And I said, well, I knew that going in. That's fine with me. That's fine. I told him I understood. So then he says I'm hired, but he sends me down the hall to then president of Schreiner, Dr. Summerlin's office. So I shook his hand and walked in and shut the door. I said, Dr. Summerlin, Dr. McCormick just hired me. You're not going to fire me already, are you? Anyway, I had a nice visit with Dr. Summerlin, and if Dr. McCormick could be here, and I'm going to make him play the end of this recording, I would tell him, Dr. McCormick, in all due respect, you were wrong about my getting rich. Why? I have gotten extremely rich with the blessings of serving hundreds of students over 13, 14 years. I told you this is conclusion, it's getting there. I had several mentors that helped me learn how to be a professor along the way. Dr. Salter, Dr. Smith, Dr. Von Bront-Seamers, Warren Ferguson, and others. Two mentors particularly assisted me a lot, ended up being my sounding board for ideas and just giving me advice anytime I asked for it. Sometimes when I didn't ask for it, Dr. Woodhull gave me advice anyway, but that's okay. So I went often to Dr. Coleman and Dr. Woodhull, who I went for advice. I learned a lot from them, and I'm very thankful for that. As I do retire, I told Marty, I understand how new mothers feel when they've had a child and they go through what's called postpartum blues. So I've kind of given her a warning. What I'm going to be going through in the next few weeks and months, I'm going to call it post-student partum blues. I think most people know I love the students. I've been blessed to be with them. Every one of them have blessed me far more than I got to bless them. I'm going to miss them a lot, along with my colleagues too, by the way. Finally, again, many people my age, some of you are close, had several careers. I've had oil and gas services, production, financial planner, custom home building with my younger brother, and finally, this one is professor for nearly 14 years. Like all of you, along the way, life happened. And I've been blessed to have a sweet wife over 56 years, Marty, who I met. My students have all heard the story on a blind date at Texas Tech. She was blind, I was a date. She said that joke's got to end. That's the last time I'm going to tell it, I promise. We had two girls. Anyway, by the way, I didn't finish that. I served our country for 8 years, as the Reverend said. Air Force, 2 years in Air Force ROTC at Tech. Marty's been along my side the whole time, right by my side. Then we had two girls who continue to make us very proud. They are parents and educators themselves. Sure, there were bumps in the road of life, but having Marty alongside me and always being my best friend helped me smooth out those bumps. She has believed in me, even when I might have had doubts on different issues. My faith in God, my family, and my friends are the life I kept. I would like to have Marty and the rest of my family stand up for 1 minute. Thank you. Have a blessed rest of the evening, and I'll give it back to Dr. Pugh. I guess he'll close it out somehow.
All right. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
So we'd like to have a short presentation by Professor Kluting's daughters. If you would come up, please. You just stand.
That's not on the agenda.
Exactly.
Teachers, you'll retire next month.
I'll never retire.
Kimberly and Tessie.
First of all, this last lecture was actually based on a book that I teach in my class. So when I learned that my dad was going to do this had a greater ripple effect than just it being my dad. This was a book that I taught my kids for over 10 years, especially my senior groups as they transition to the next stages in life. So this one was a meaningful book nod to me. I was going to give you some cheesy retirement quote. I was looking them up the minute that I heard that I had to talk to you. But as usual, when my dad was giving his talk, I quickly realized that he moved that goalpost far ahead of where I was at. So, I will say that my dad spends most of his educational career doing something that by God's he would refer to as the zone of proximal development. Now, if that already lost you, I'm going to simplify things for you because when I first heard of it, I was like, what? This is really the zone where people that have to adjust to things, to pivot to things they weren't expecting, this is how they learn to pivot. This is where they learn to pivot. My dad is really good about not showing you when he's sweating through the pivots. And we've seen that when he's transitioned to different phases of his careers in life. And it's taught my sister and I a lot of grit throughout our own careers as well. And I would just say that by God's he would be very proud of how he pivoted throughout his life. So. And I'll keep mine even shorter because I tagged my sister to talk. You're our forever teacher. Gives us to stay on. So we wouldn't be who we are without you.
My wife will tell you, I surprised her in one way. Reading that last part, my girl gave me a nickname some years ago. What is that nickname?
Marshmallow.
The giant marshmallow. So my wife, I read her this last part, she said, you're not going to make it. You're going to cry. So I did have to choke up pretty tight on that last page, I admit it. But I didn't really cry. If I did, you didn't see the tears. But the life you keep, again, the second part of my talk, doesn't matter if you're a student, doesn't matter if you're my age, doesn't matter, mid-career, the life you keep, I think, is what it's all about. And again, speaking of learning, I actually learned that from my parents. They always took care of family. Whatever was going on, they took care of family. It didn't matter. We didn't know a thing at times were even tough. They took care of family. They waited on people. Our father had an 8th grade education. You had to have a mentally ill father. He had to plow the field at 14 years old and quit school. All that kind of stuff. But he learned how to raise kids, how to set examples in the community, all those kinds of things. So I'm looking in this room at the life you keep. It's you, my friends, my students, my family. You're my thing that I keep in life. No one can take it away from me. Thank you for being here.
What we don't have with us, and apologize in this summer, is Dad's 10-year service here at Shrine University. And we'd like to acknowledge publicly how much it means to the university, faculty, students, and their family, that you be honored. Thank you so much.
They forgot it at the ceremony.
We forgot it now.
It's okay, I told them. I think I have the 10-year award coming. They went back and said, oh my God, we made a mistake. They said they're going to get it to me when I bring them my keys. That's when I can get it. Everybody have a safe drive and a blessed rest of the week.